The local church is the hope of the world? No, as a matter of fact, God no longer dwells here. I don't believe that joy is a possibility, that our lives are better lived in community, and that we are called to love each other radically. The truth is, the church is on the brink of extinction. I refuse to believe that we are part of a story larger than our own, and we have been changed to bring change. Don't be fooled. Poverty is too overwhelming. Racism can't be overcome, and evil will never be defeated. It's impossible for me to believe things will get better. In the future, it will be evident God can't help, and you're wrong if you believe God can. I am convinced that you can't turn things around. I would be lying if I said God cares. But you should know I believe exactly the opposite. God cares. I would be lying if I said that you can't turn things around. I am convinced God can, and you're wrong if you believe God can't help. In the future, it will be evident that things will get better. It's impossible for me to believe evil will never be defeated, racism can't be overcome, and poverty is too overwhelming. Don't be fooled. We have been changed to bring change, and we are part of a story larger than our own. I refuse to believe that the church is on the brink of extinction. The truth is that we are called to love each other radically, that our lives are better lived in community, and that joy is a possibility. I don't believe God no longer dwells here. No, as a matter of fact, the local church is the hope of the world.
So good morning and welcome to your new home. And I say that because this place was built for you, right? It's yours. It's not mine. It's not staff people. It was built for you. So when you hear that last line in this video about the local church being the hope of the world, you are the church. It's you. It's not this building. It's a collection of people who are sharing the love of Jesus to those around them, to your family members, to your friends, to your coworkers, to the people that you interact with every day. You are the church. Now I'm sure that some of you are hearing that and going, I don't know if I really believe that. My last church experience wasn't so great. I felt judged. I certainly didn't feel loved. Or maybe at your last church experience, all you heard was that they wanted your money every Sunday. Or you thought, I like the concept of this Jesus thing, but as I look around, all I see are hypocrites. Well, let me first say that I'm sorry. I'm sorry you felt judged. I'm sorry you felt like the church was just interested in your money. I'm sorry that the people seem to be like hypocrites or act like hypocrites. And I'm especially sorry that you didn't feel the love of Jesus. Now, I know some of you may not have experienced that at all because today is your first time maybe stepping in a church or checking out a church. But the majority of us here today, including myself, this has been our experience of the church in the past. But like that video said, I really do believe the local church is the hope of the world. My wife, Amy, had been a Christian for over 20 years when we met. I, on the other hand, had believed there was a God, and at some point in my life, I might need him, but at this point in my life, I felt like I could make better decisions for my life than he could, right? That I could be in control of things. So I would only use this God guy if things were either going bad or I really wanted something to go good, right? I really wanted that job promotion or something like that. I mean, God to me was almost like a genie in a bottle. Well, it didn't take long, as many of you know, when you start journeying through life, life starts to beat you up and things start to implode. In 2004, I totally surrendered to God. I was finally broken enough that I was willing to turn over control to God. Now, at this point in our life, Amy and I would say we were believers, but we certainly weren't followers of Jesus. At least not yet. You know, and the difference between a believer and a follower is like going to a football game. You're an attender at the game, but you're not playing in the game. And so we were really just attenders to church at this time. I mean, you know, we gave money, right? We went to a life group. I even actually helped set up chairs in the morning, you know, before church would start. But we really weren't in the game. We weren't on mission with Jesus at this point. So in 2008, we kind of got to a point in our life where we were tired of just attending church. We wanted to actually serve outside of the church, and we wanted to live out the principles that Jesus was teaching in the Bible. Amen. So we went to the church leadership, and Amy asked if she could form a welcoming committee. Kind of like a welcoming group that would greet new people to church, and actually she wanted to go to their house and take them some cookies and actually get to know them and thank them for attending church. And I asked the church leadership, I wasn't near as brave as she was, but I said, hey, could we have like a monthly men's group and do an outing, like maybe riding motorcycles once a month or going on a fishing trip with just guys who were kind of being drugged to church by their wife or were kind of new to the whole church thing, you know? Now, if you know, Amy is really sweet and nice. And so they said to her, no, you can't do that. But we'll put you off over here in the corner, and if people come up to you, then you can kind of tell them about the church and the different programs that we offer. Now, me on the other hand, I'm not near as nice and sweet, so they just told me no. But the message that we actually received, the underlying tone of that, was that we were too messy. We had too much baggage in our past. We had too much brokenness in us. And we just would not be welcome as being kind of the people that would engage first-time people to the church. Now, in their defense, right? Granted, before I was baptized, before I came to faith, I was messy, right? I was out getting drunk on the weekends. I was only concerned about the next best thing. You know, and Amy, she was slightly messy, but compared to me, not very much. In fact, she had a friend that actually told her she needed to get a good pair of tennis shoes so that she could run from me when the relationship went south. And our kids were really messy too, because we had a blended family. So we had 4 teenage girls at one time. I mean, it was so messy. I remember going to Sam's Club, and we were pushing around a flat cart, and we were buying tampons by the case. And I thought, the only thing that could have been worse in my life at that time was that if I had run into a high school buddy of mine or something, you know? It certainly wasn't what I had envisioned for my life. It was not something I had planned. But God He was working in my life, He was working in Amy's life way before we even knew it. And He's working in your life even before you know it. And the reason I know that is because I could have never gotten through all those years of teenage drama otherwise. So in the church's defense, we were messy and we were broken. But somehow, God was transforming us. You know, we got shot down with no conversation about what we needed to do next, or how we could grow more in our faith, or what we could do that would help us get to a point where we could start those things that we wanted to do in the church. And so we felt burned by the church. And so if you're here today and you feel like you've been burned by the church, know that I get that. I understand that. You know, we ended up leaving that church and we started to serve others outside of the church. And we started Jesus Was Homeless. And as we started to build relationships with other messy people like us, with other broken and hurting people like us, our hearts and minds began to transform. And we knew that we wanted to share the gift that Jesus had given us. You know, this gift of hope, this gift of a full life that we were getting to experience. But the absolute last thing we wanted to do was start a church. We had been burned by church. Why would we want to start a church? And when you look around Branson, there's plenty of churches, right? There's a church on every corner, it seemed like. Unfortunately, as we visited different churches, they were just way too familiar with what we had come from. We needed a church that would reach the unchurched. We needed a church that would reach people who'd never gone to church. We needed a church that would reach the de-churched, the people maybe who had tried church but didn't like organized religion. We needed a church for people like Amy and I that had been burned by church. We needed a church where messy, broken people could come as they are. A place that taught about God's grace. That God says to all people, come as you are. Amen. He doesn't make us get our act together. He doesn't make us jump through religious hoops. He doesn't make us prove that we can change. He takes us as is. So from day one, we've had this value here at Gateway called come as you are. And we've taken some heat for it, right? We've been accused of watering down the Bible, not taking sin seriously, of being an easy believer church that just tries to entertain people. We've been accused of being a beginner church, but not one for spirituality, but one where you just start in the Bible, not one where you can actually mature. We've taken all kinds of heat. Yet, over the course of the last 5-6 years, we've never wavered from this value. This value of come as you are explains a great deal of what you experience or feel here at Gateway Branson. You hear music, you hear on the radio. The environment doesn't really feel like church. People don't have to dress up here. There aren't many religious symbols, and we don't use very much technical religious language. See, we want to create a culture where people will feel immediately at home, where unchurched people will love to attend. Now, this doesn't mean that we compromise our biblical beliefs. It does mean we work really hard to meet people where they're at. So because of that, word has spread that there's this come as you are church in Branson, and more people have found faith and grown spiritually and invited others. You know, we have seen lives changed big time here. In fact, we've had over 135 baptisms since starting the church in 2005. And I want you to know, these aren't rededications. These are people that were once radically far from God. Meth addicts, prostitutes, thieves, alcoholics. I mean, they have all found Jesus and began a journey of trust and relationship with him here. You know, God's been doing some miraculous things. He's been changing us all in life-giving ways. And we could never do it by ourselves. See, because real lasting transformation just doesn't happen when you try to force others to change. But God's grace is messy. You know, some people say they believe it, but they really don't like the smell of it. Because often it smells like cigarette smoke, alcohol, body odor. And they don't really like the sound of it, right? It sounds like profanity and broken relationships. And they don't like where grace starts, because it starts where people end up. You know, people end up broken and messy, and that's where grace has to start. But it's what real people are longing for. You know, at Gateway we like to use the phrase, no perfect people around here. We do this because we're convinced that we all have imperfections. And we're equally convinced that if we have a culture where we have to hide those imperfections or pretend they're not there, then none of us will make any real progress in our spiritual journey. But what you won't really fully understand what we do here or why we do what we do until you have an unchurched family member, friend, or coworker sitting next to you in church. You see, God's grace is giving us what we don't deserve. God's grace gives us blessings, gives us forgiveness, gives us a full life. You know, I want to share a story with you of a former drug addict who came to church for the very first time. But because of God's grace and the come as you are value that we have here, she found Jesus waiting for her here. She found life and freedom, and now has become a vital part of our Gateway Branson Restore group and of serving with Jesus was homeless. Watch this.
Before God, I totally ran on self-will, and that drove me straight into the ground. Guilty, shameful. I didn't make any right decisions. I was lost and alone, scared a lot. God came into the picture when I was completely out of means. The drugs weren't working anymore. I had totally screwed up life. I had nowhere to look but up, basically. I was defeated.
Of course, I was young, but I still saw that she was going through a lot of trouble, and it was pretty rough at home.
It was Christmas time, and they'd come by, and I was really broke. I'd lost my job, so Bryan invited me to Christmas, and I didn't even have breakfast for my kids. So I said, well, why not? Let's go to church and have some breakfast, and because it was the week of Christmas. So that's when I went to church for the first time.
I felt really cared for.
I was reminded of a loving God that was out there, not the punishment God that I thought was there. And, you know, I said, I finally gave up and said, you know what, I surrender to you, God. I don't know what you have entailed for me, but I'm ready to do whatever your will is for me. I was a little scared at first to accept the change. And then I kind of had the attitude like I know everything. And then I started realizing, you know, they are pointing out some good things that I need. They are helping me set some goals. I need that motivation. I need that kick in the butt too. So it was good from then on. I'm glad that I haven't taken the class until now, because I wouldn't have been ready for it. And God has perfect timing, and I think this is when I needed to take it, and I was ready for a 3-hour application process and being poked 3 different times in the hand today to get blood drawn. So I would have definitely not have done it a year ago or 2 years ago. And I am excited to see where I can go in the future. So. So much better. I feel a sense of purpose and direction again. Happy. I feel like my job means something, that I'm not just selling people something, that I really have my job they can't do without me. Failure does not mean defeat. Failure is the stepping stone to success, for success is built on the backbone of failure. I took this opportunity to push forward and try again. I once again stepped out of my comfort zone and got an even better job than the one before. Better hours, better money, and it was exactly as it should have been. I was promoted to assistant manager in just a few months, and in just 1 year I've already gotten 2 pay raises. Students, don't worry about tomorrow. Instead, resolve to do your best today.
I'm very proud that she's back on her feet. She's not doing drugs. She's caring for other people. She has a lot of friends, and now she's helping other people that was in her place, hoping that for the best of them.
Things are so much better when you give up the fight. I don't know why I'm crying now. Trust is hard. It's not always easy, but persevere, and the joys you see from time to time is amazing, and they fuel you in ways that you couldn't even imagine or dream of. And you can look back on that, and that can be your gift to give somebody else who's still struggling, to know exactly the pain that they're feeling. And it seems impossible now that you can help somebody else, but you really can help somebody else, and that's one of the true gifts of life. Jesus was homeless, gave me my heart back. I think that's simply as I can say it.
See, God wants His church to start with grace. Come as you are, because that's how He changes the world around us, life by life. But that gets messy. Some people want the church to be an exclusive club, to differentiate the good guys from the bad guys, the righteous from the sinners, to be a place of our people instead of those people. In a come-as-you-are environment, you get homeless people sitting next to doctors and lawyers. You get gay rights activists sitting next to abortion clinic protesters. You get Democrats sitting next to Republicans.
Oh, yeah. The fight is on.
You get extreme diversity. And yet, we are all equally valued because Jesus loves us all. And that's why we've taken heat from religious people and other churches. And that's who you are if you call Gateway Branson home. But I think we're in pretty darn good company. If you have a Bible, we're going to be looking in the New Testament of the Bible today. And if you didn't know, the Bible is actually broken up into two sections, an Old Testament and a New Testament. The Old Testament is really about life on earth before Jesus came, and the New Testament is about life on earth after Jesus came. If you don't have a Bible, we have free, easy-to-read Bibles right over there at the connection spot that you can grab at any time. If you have our Gateway Branson app, there's actually a link to the YouVersion Bible in that app. And if you don't have a Bible, no big deal. We're going to put the verses up here on the screen. So today, I want to look in the New Testament in the book of Mark, chapter 2, and we're going to look at verses 15 through 17. Later, Levi invited Jesus and his disciples to his home as dinner guests, along with many tax collectors and other disreputable sinners. And notice how in parentheses it says, there were many people of this kind among Jesus' followers. But when the teachers of religious law, who were Pharisees, saw him eating with tax collectors and other sinners, they asked his disciples, why does he eat with such scum? I want to pause right there so I can give you a little context about what's going on in this day. So Jesus and his disciples, his posse, his closest friends, they've been invited to Levi's house for dinner. Levi will become Matthew later on, is a Jewish tax collector for the Romans. Now, nobody really likes it when the IRS comes calling, right? But if you're a Jewish tax collector, you're hated even more than the IRS of today. I know that's extremely hard to believe, but it's true. But see, at this time in history, Israel is being occupied by the Roman Empire. So to finance this great worldwide empire that the Romans have, they've levied taxes on all nations under their control. And so Jewish people that chose to work for the Romans, collecting those taxes, were despised, and they were even considered traitors because of their support for Rome. And so it was also kind of common knowledge among the Jewish people that these tax collectors were making themselves rich by gouging their fellow Jews. You know, they would sometimes collect as much as 98% of a person's income, barely leaving them enough to survive on. They had to give the Roman Empire 90%, and they could keep any amount above that. And so oftentimes they would keep as much as they could. So you can imagine at this time, Levi and his friends, who are tax collectors, are not very well liked by the religious people, right? They are really, really despised and considered disgusting. Now, here's what's crazy, though. If you continue to dive in the Bible and read through it, you're going to find that Jesus hung out with people like this all the time. Unpopular, messy, broken people all the time, which also made him not very well liked by these religious people. So they're complaining, these religious guys are complaining to these followers of Jesus. And they're asking him, you know, why does he hang out? Why does he eat with such scum? Well, Jesus overhears them saying this. So let's look in verse 17. It says, when Jesus heard this, he told them, healthy people don't need a doctor, sick people do. I have come to call not those who think they are righteous, but those who know they are sinners. And I love that verse because it really illustrates God's heart of grace for messy people. People like Keisha and Amy and I. See, Gateway Branson Church, we should be a hospital for sick people, a safe haven where people can begin to explore who God is on their own terms, in their own time. It should be a place full of messy, broken people, not a people pretending to be perfect. In fact, it should be a place full of hypocrites. You know, and I think that's why you need to make sure that you're putting your faith or your trust in Jesus and not in me and not in people, but in Jesus. Because here's the deal. We are all hypocrites to some extent, and I will let you down. People will let you down, but Jesus won't let you down.
Man.
And as we learn to fully value each other as human beings, as we learn to experience God's grace and hang out with Him, God does something beautiful in us and through us that changes the world around us. The come as you are value is about creating a culture of God-giving acceptance. It's where people really find faith and grow and experience a life in freedom that Jesus promises. But we must learn to live in that grace, right? We can't just offer that grace once or twice. We have to learn to live in it day by day. And in order to live in it, we've got to start seeing ourselves and others through the eyes of Jesus. See, we're all like this masterpiece covered in mud. You know, the mud is all the junk that's happened in our life. It's all the lies we've been told about ourselves, that we're not good enough, that we're fat, or that we're ugly, or that will never amount to anything. It's all our past mistakes that we've taken on and believed. But under all that mud, this masterpiece is a multi-million-dollar creation. And the key is going back to the Creator and having that masterpiece restored. And then to see others restored. You know, in the New Testament book of Ephesians in chapter 2, verse 10, it says, "For we are God's masterpiece. He has created us anew in Christ Jesus, so we can do the good works He's planned for us long ago." See that? We are all God's masterpiece. That means the hypocrite that's sitting next to you, the homeless guy, the doctor, the lawyer, we're all God's masterpiece. We no longer have to believe the lies that we are anything less. We don't have to roll around in the mud any longer, because God has actually planned good things for us. And it may not feel like that right now, but He's planned good things for you. And if we can believe that about ourselves, and we can begin to see ourselves and others the way Jesus sees them, a masterpiece that He created for good things, that's grace. That's what God's grace is. So we have this value, come as you are. And that means to live in that grace, to live in God's grace. But oftentimes, I see people stay stuck. I see them use this come as you are value as an excuse to continue to maybe stay in a broken relationship, or to stay still in their past mistakes. And it's not an excuse. The second half of this come as you are value that we have is called, but don't stay that way. Part of understanding God's grace is being connected to others. That's why we have Restore Group and life groups, is so that you don't have to do a journey alone. You can get connected. We believe by living connected to others that we will be transformed. And we'll be able to then change the world around us because of that transformation. You see, relationships matter with other people. That's why we don't want you to just be attenders pretending here. We want you to start by jumping in and serving. And I know that sounds crazy because maybe some of you came from church past like I did, and it was like, you're too messy to serve. You got to start, get yourself cleaned up, and then you can serve. We believe the opposite here. We believe through serving is when that transformation starts to take place. You don't have to have it all together. You know, you might even still be checking out this whole Jesus dude, and all that's going on. But if you get connected to serving and get connected to others, I know God will start working on you and you will start to grow spiritually. You will see people differently. You'll see people like Jesus does, a masterpiece. And there's lots of ways you can serve around here. So at the end of service today, you'll just go over here to this connection spot and use your gifts and your talents, or maybe you don't even know where to start. They'll help get you plugged in. So give them your information. See, here at Gateway, you're encouraged to do two things. One is show up. It's kind of like the gym, If you never go to the gym, it'll never do you any good, right? If you don't show up here, it's not going to do you any good. And then number two is be an owner. Remember, it's not my church. This is your church. You are an owner here. And so take ownership. This is your place. You are the church, which means hang out, meet new people, make new friends, talk to old friends. Being part of Gateway is not coming to watch the show, although the band sounds pretty good. But it's about participating in a community of people. It's being plugged in. It's where you can find different groups to plug in with within the community. And you often find that through serving. And I believe if those of you that call Gateway Branson church home live in God's grace and see others as Jesus see them, then there's hope for the local church to be the light of the world. But it won't be easy. I remember the first year I came to faith, that I gave Jesus my life. I started to realize that some of the things I had grown up doing were against His will. I hadn't thought about any of that. It's just how the world was, and I figured, kind of no harm, no foul, didn't know any of that stuff. But once I realized it was wrong, I tried to stop, but I couldn't. I couldn't change my thoughts on my own. I found myself doing things that I'd really told myself I didn't want to do anymore, but I was still kind of a slave to my old ways and my old habits. And every time I would pray or try to read the Bible, I'd get distracted, or I'd begin to feel guilt from my past. I'd feel almost condemned or kind of horrible inside, and that God was probably disappointed in me. And so I just stayed stuck, and I just quit doing it all together. When I failed, it was just, I didn't want to do it. I started running from God. But then I started to understand God's grace. I started to see other people as a masterpiece. I started to see myself as that masterpiece. And because of that grace, because of His love, look what it says in the Bible. In Ephesians chapter 2, verse 8, it says, God saved you by His grace when you believe. And you can't take credit for this. It's a gift from God. Because of that grace, I was able to receive that gift. And my life started to change. Think about it. Deep inside, right? We're kind of all wired this way, that you were meant for more. You know that. I knew that. Even when I wasn't following Jesus, I knew I was meant for more. That's why I was always chasing the next best thing. We know we're meant for more. We can feel it. We know we have far greater potential. But the problem is, we can never reach that potential of who we are created to be until we go back to the Creator. And when we go back to the Creator, man, your life will change. And today we're doing baptism. And it can be the first step in going back to the Creator and asking Him to restore you. You know, if you've come to a point in your life where you've asked Jesus to be your forgiver, your leader, and you're ready to trust Him with your will and your life and your decisions, I mean, man, that's why we do baptism. Today is the day to make that. You know, the Bible says that you should proclaim that change, that you should let people know what you're doing by following Jesus. So, going under the water symbolizes your old life being buried. You know, it's this forgiveness that Jesus died on the cross for, that your past, even your present and future, is forgiven. You know, coming up out of the water symbolizes this new life that you have decided to take with Jesus. You know, this is the same life, the same spirit that was given to Jesus when he died on the cross and he rose again. You know, and like you saw in that video, when somebody gets dunked here, when somebody decides to take that step, we celebrate it. We cheer. We shoot silly string and confetti. We blow air horns. We make noise. We take seriously the words that Jesus spoke in the Bible, in the book of Luke. He says there will be more rejoicing in heaven over one sinner who repents than over 99 righteous persons who do not need to repent. So we figure if heaven is celebrating, we should join in. So if you have made a decision to trust Jesus and you want what He did to matter and you're ready to mark this moment publicly, we want you to join us right after service today when all the kids get out. We'll have towels that you get to keep. I'm sure the water's plenty warm. It's been like 110 this week.
Yeah.
So really, there's no excuse, right? We'll have baptism packets over here. You just grab one of those, fill it out. You know, if you've been baptized before, but maybe you need to reconnect with your Creator, to be restored, you know, ask Him to remove any mud that you might have gotten on yourself that you might be holding on to. And the band's going to come up here, and they're going to play some songs, to God, and for God, and about God. You can sit, you can stand. We'll put the words up on the screen so that you can sing along. 2 weeks ago, I challenged you to get to know your neighbor, to know their first name and their last name on each side of the house or motel room that you live in. And so you got some sticky notes, some yellow Post-it notes on your chair. And I want you to write down the names of your neighbors on those sticky notes. And you have 2 copies. So one copy is for you to keep where you can see it all week this week. Put it in a place that maybe if you spend a lot of time in front of the bathroom mirror, stick it on your mirror. If you're in the car a lot, put it in your car. Someplace that you're going to see it. The other one, I want you to stick on the glass windows over there of your neighbors' names. And during the week, when you see those names, I want you just to pray for those people. And that's why I want them stuck over there. As we walk by this week and we see those names, we're going to stop and we're going to pray for those names. And I want you to pray for God's grace, that you begin to see them as Jesus sees them, as a masterpiece. And if you know your neighbors at a deeper level, maybe you know what need they have, you can begin to pray for that need. Now, we don't pass an offering bucket here. This is just our gift to you. But if Gateway is your church home, we've got buckets set up in the back. We've got some giving stations you can use a debit card with. You can go to our website, gatewaybranson.org, and you can give online. You know, but only give if you want to help us reach more people that have been burned by church, unchurched, or dechurched. People that you know want to experience life and freedom that maybe you're experiencing now. You know, that's what giving is for. It's to expand God's kingdom. It's not to make anybody's pockets full, right? It's to reach more people who yet don't know God yet. And if you would like someone to pray with you and for you, if you're struggling with something, or maybe you have a friend or relative, or maybe today you're trying to decide, do I get baptized? You want somebody to pray with you, walk you through that? There's going to be people over here to the left, kind of over by that door over there, and people over to my right by the garage door that would love to pray with you and
He's
for
got a lot
you.
of traffic up the center.
And so as the band plays these songs, I want you to just think about that mud. You know, go back to your Creator. Go back to Jesus and say, man, remove that mud so I can see people as you see them. So I can see myself as a masterpiece.